welcome to Catch Ya Outdoors. I'm your host, Captain Rob Modies. My contact email is catchoutdoors@gmail.com. Website's catchoutdoors.com. Facebook page is Catch Ya Outdoors. I got 2 books that were published during what I now call the COVID years. Bridge to Paradise released this past November, and What I Know About Fishing Southwest Florida released in November of 2020. Signed copies of Bridge to Paradise are available on my website at catchoutdoors.com. Both titles can also be purchased on Amazon in both print and Kindle versions. I'm back. Today's episode is number 27, titled Fishing Stuff. I'm going to try not to sniffle today. My allergies are raging over here on the east coast of Florida. The pollen is falling out of the oak trees and whatever else is blowing around. So, oh joy. So I may have to take a break or two while I'm doing this, but we'll get it done. First, some notes and some updates. The air fryer worked out really good. So we've been experimenting. I mentioned that in last week's podcast, and I did get some tips. And we found an air fryer cookbook. Finally, we found one. The funny thing about the air fryer cookbooks, we were searching for them. They were all printed back in or published in 2018. And our unit's much newer and has more buttons on it that aren't even mentioned in the early book. So we finally found one that pertains to us, and I've done pretty well with it. Chicken wings are great, fresh. I don't do frozen. The fresh ones are great. Hamburgers, did good with hamburgers. And I threw in some frozen tater tots and stuff like that. And all of it's coming out pretty good. We struggled with broccoli, fried it just a little too long, or roasted it just a little too long. So we're working on the veggies. But anyway, thanks for the tips. And specifically to our friend Deanna for the avocado oil, that makes a huge difference because it can get a whole lot hotter than other oils and it's tasty. And also parchment paper inserts. Somebody, I can't remember, I think somebody that Jonelle knows said that, but parchment, these basically, they're just like the parchment baking paper that you get on a roll. They make round ones with holes in it designed for the air fryer. So we're working on it. It's come out pretty good, actually. Stuff related to fishing. Let's see, a couple fairly substantial news items here. FWC had their monthly meeting. And at that meeting, they have decided to make Goliath grouper available for harvest in a very limited fashion. So don't get all pumped and excited. And it's expensive, and you could probably go buy a huge chunk of grouper for what it's going to cost you to do this. But anyway, 200 harvest permit tags will be submitted. So there'll only be 200 caught. You have to have the tag. I believe the tag, I've got my notes and they're written all over this piece of paper, but I wrote down $150 for residents and $500 for a non-resident. You get one shot at it. That's basically it. And then there's a slot limit. The slot is 24 to 36 inches. That probably won't be too difficult, I wouldn't think. I think I'd be probably fishing inshore for one versus off, because the offshore ones are huge right now and have been for a while. So I don't know. I haven't Goliath fished in 5 years. So to be honest with you, I've never really targeted them other than with customers years ago when they just wanted to catch the biggest thing out there. So we go after a Goliath. Let's see. There's limited harvests in certain areas. Let's see. I wrote the harvest would be permitted in state waters except those of Martin County south through Atlan coast of the Keys. All of the St. Lucie River and its tributaries, and Dry Tortugas National Park. So those are off limits. Allowable gear is pretty much hook and line only. No nets, no spearing, no diving, none of that jazz. And there will be a season, March 1st through May 31st. And I have to imagine that's not this year. Oh no, it says right here 2023 next year. So it's it doesn't say. I was looking to see if it's lottery or not. Let's see, recreation rec program. I'm looking at the real thing now. Oh yeah, it is a random draw lottery. So it's a lottery to get the tickets. Then you pay for the $150 if you win the lottery as a local, and $500 for a guest. So anyway, I don't know what's going to come of that, but they finally relented and decided that'd be a great idea. I'm not real wild about it personally. I don't know. There's so much other stuff you can do, but everybody's, there's a lot of people that just want to have that one, right? That one mount done. I caught that. I suppose that's what this, eat it. They're delicious, by the way. I'm not going to kid you on that part. But, you know, anyway. The FWC also approved changes to dolphin rules. That would be dolphin fish or mahi mahi for those of you that are going, they eat dolphin in Florida? Yeah, I still hear that all the time when you see it on a menu. Mahi mahi is dolphin fish, is basically what it was. This is in the Atlantic state waters only. Changes will be effective May 1st. Now, this is pretty big. Reducing the recreational daily bag limit from 10 to 5. Reducing the private recreational daily vessel limit from 60 to 30 fish. That's per vessel, no matter how many people you got on there. And clarifying in rule that captain and crew bag limits are prohibited statewide. So you cannot keep captains can't keep it, crew can't count, and that's statewide. That's not just in Atlantic waters. That's also over in the Gulf of Mexico. But these rules are specifically related to the East Coast. I believe, of course, that goes down to the Florida Keys on the ocean side. That's the Atlantic Ocean. So anyway, that's a pretty big change. When Jonelle and I first started fishing dolphin, you could keep all you wanted. We threw back the small ones. They grow like crazy. So it was pretty rare to get one that was less than, say, 18, 20 inches long if you fished off the Florida Keys. And then they dropped it to vessel limits of 60 and 10 per person. Now it's 5 per person, 30 per vessel. So be aware of that change, and that happens on May 1st, I believe it said. Yeah, May 1st. So today's episode, fishing stuff, that was related, so that's why I did that. I took a necessary trip. It's always necessary. A necessary trip to Bass Pro Shops here in Fort Lauderdale. And that's what led to this podcast. I have not been in a fishing store in a while other than, some fly shops. I haven't been in like a saltwater rod and reel, spin fishing place. So I needed a pair of boots. I was looking for a pair of outdoor, heavy duty boots. And Bass Pro's got a real good selection, actually, hunting boots, all kinds of stuff. So that's really what led me there. And I was also in the hunt for folding chairs. Jonelle and I were doing some of these festivals, and our old folding chairs they went belly up. Saltwater got to them. They're a mess. So I thought, well, I'll go there. They've got all kinds of those, the outside camping chairs, those umbrella fold-up chairs that you can carry in a pouch on your back or in a sling on your back. So I got there, found my chairs, found my boots, and then I started walking around looking at stuff, and man, oh man, it was crazy. Some background here, just so you know, I used to be on Bass Pro's pro staff. I was an early pro staffer, a long time ago, 15 years ago now, maybe. And eventually I graduated to the Mako staff, which was Mako Boats, and got me a boat and fished off that. That was sweet. That was really sweet. But I worked hard for it. I'm not, they don't hand it to you with a bow on it. Wish they did. And then later I taught classes after I got cancer and had to quit guiding. I turned around and started teaching classes at Bass Pro, fishing classes, and that was a lot of fun. So while I was at Bass Pro, I was just marveling at all the new equipment because I was just a little out of tune. I mean, I have what I need to fish. I fish with the same old stuff over. Like a lot of anglers get locked into things. And I'm going to go to ICAST this year. I think that's July. Don't hold me to that, but I just got an email about it. So I'm going to sign up and go to ICAST. But so I'll see all kinds of new stuff. But I've really kind of been out of the loop. And COVID, of course, caused a lot of that. My interest just was not there. I'd go fishing when I could, go to the pier, go to the beach, go to one of the ponds or creeks here, go, peacock fishing and just kind of keep it that way. So I wasn't real tuned. So I go on Bass Pro and I'm walking around, and once I got the chairs and the shoes out of the way, which, by the way, chairs, if you need one of those folding camping chairs, I've never seen so many. This is in the East Coast shop here in Dania. So I'm not talking about, I did not go into Bass Pro on the west side, which is where my home was. And that's where I worked most of my time, was out of the West Coast, one in Fort Myers. So I was in the Dania shop over here, but they had more daggone camp chairs than you can possibly imagine. It was absolutely crazy. Every size and shape, good prices, down to as low as $9.99, or maybe even, that was the lowest I saw, up to $60 or $70 for really, high quality chairs. So if you need that, check it out. Clothing. I wound up in the clothing section because I haven't bought myself a fishing shirt in ages. Again, I didn't really need to. However, I mean, I wear Columbia and I wear Hook, which is spelled Huk for those of you that are looking for it. Hook and others. I've had other shirts. I still have them in my collection. I don't wear the ones with my name on it and Soulmate Charters on it anymore, but I have enough of a collection of ones to wear out and to go to the beach in, stuff like that, fishing in. They're comfortable and they're cool in the summertime. But Bass Pro has its own line, and they just introduced a whole bunch of new colors, and that caught my eye because I like the plaid looking, that plaid look, the checked look that fishing shirts have come out in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. And I'm always looking for a new shade. I always seem to wind up with blue this and blue that, but they had these kind of, I don't know, green, and they're really attractive looking. So I got me a shirt. New lures and a noticeable return to supply levels from the week and before the pandemic. When I last time I was in Bass Pro was probably almost 2 years ago. I met someone there who wanted to pick up one of my books. I autographed the book and I took it to Bass Pro and we met there in Dania. And I spent time walking. After I did that, I spent time walking around. And man, it was just the shelves have been devastated there, and supply was bad. So apparently, Bass Pro has got its supply problem fixed, best I can tell. They had lots and lots of lures in both, and just hooks and weights and all kinds of stuff in both sections in both the saltwater section, which I walked through, as well as the freshwater. Um, Matter of fact, the only shortage of supply that I really remember seeing that would pertain to me was Power Pro. I like to use Power Pro lines. I use two types. I'll talk about that in a second. But Power Pro is like the main. That's the main one everybody goes for, and they were limited. They had some 20 pound, they had some 10 pound tests, but the 30s and over were all gone. Now remember, over here we do a lot of offshore, so people buy the bigger weights than they do on the West Coast. That was the only thing I really noticed. Everything else seemed to be really good. Um, in my case, I switched to Cortland line a long time ago with a filler of Power Pro. So here's the deal: Cortland was pretty hard to get way before COVID time, and I really like Cortland's braided line. It's soft, holds color really well. I use high vis yellow. It holds color really well. It's very castable, and I had very little trouble with wind knots down in that 15-pound range. Typically, when you go below 20-pound test, you start getting in danger of wind knots with braid. Braid's very light. Uh, it it'll literally blow off the reel in the wind. If the bail's open, so it's kind of a problem. You'll get wind knots in it. Cortland doesn't do that. Cortland, for some reason, holds up better at the lower numbers, at the 15 and 20-pound test. Um, Funny thing about Cortland and how I got involved in Dave Wester at Lear's Economy Tackle in Fort Myers was in North Fort Myers was the first person I ran into who mentioned it to me, and I bought a giant spool, one of the large spool. I think it was 1,500 yards, might have been 1,000 or 12. I don't know. It was big, because at that time I was spooling lots and lots of reels while I was guiding, and I fell in love with the stuff because my customers weren't having trouble with it. They weren't getting wind knots and stuff when they cast, and I noticed the color was staying with it. So anyway, the history of Cortland is really interesting. It's referred to as Cortland Master Braid. That's the title that has on the package. Very difficult to find in stores. If you're on the West Coast, y'all can check with Dave at Lear's, but you're not going to find it in Bass Pro or any other shop that I'm aware of. I've had to order it online over here. I usually get 15 and 20-pound tests. I don't respool anywhere near as much as I used to as a guide, so it lasts a while. But here's the story. Cortland, in 1953, Cortland invented the modern fly line, the coated fly line, what we use today. They invented it. It floated. I mean, that was the first floating fly line. It didn't saturate with water. It stayed on top of the surface. So when you were shallow water fishing, it was really novel. It was actually crazy. 1953. That's when I was born, man. It's 60 something years ago. What am I now? 68? Yeah, something like that. I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, they invented the modern fly line. So my reasoning was, if they can do that, then I'm sure they can make a decent braid line. And they really do. So that's how I wound up with it. So check it out. You're probably going to have to get it online if you want it. It's really hard to find. Dave had it, like I said, but I think he had it in the big giant rolls. I don't think he was ever carried the smaller cartons like like the 300 yard that Power Pro sells there in. Many, many years ago, I found a very special little lure. And this was actually, I started using these lures right after I got back to Florida from living up in Kentucky for a while. I'm going to say I probably got the first ones around, oh gosh, probably 1994 or 95. And that was actually at a shop here in Fort Lauderdale back when we first came back to Florida. I lived in Fort Lauderdale before I went over to the West Coast. And these little guys are made by Calcutta. Calcutta baits have been around for a very long time. They make all kinds of really neat castables. But in this particular, they had this little guy. They call it the swim shad, and to this day, I'm pretty sure that's what it's still called. Sometimes it's found. There's a version of it called the fish foil shad, but they're both made by Calcutta. They're soft plastics. They have a paddle tail. They're small, an eighth ounce on the little swim shad are the ones I like the best. And then the next size up is a quarter. And then I think they go up to 3/8, but I don't want anything bigger than that because if I'm fishing for peacocks and bass and things like that in all these local canals and waterways over here on the East Coast, I like that eighth ounce, the small one. And I'm holding my fingers up, and you can't see that, but they're about an inch long, maybe a little longer than an inch. They're small. You'll need light line to cast it too. That's where that 15-pound braid comes in to toss it any kind of distance. It's a pretty simple little swim bait. You can just reel it. You don't have to do anything to it. Just reel it. The tail wags, and then I like to pulse it. I'll give it a couple little touches with the tip of the rod, and then let it sink a little bit. Let it work its way down, and then do it again. Peacocks love it. I don't buy the colored ones. They have them in all colors, and normally when you fish peacocks, they like the yellows and the reds, and we call it the Jamaican flag. That yellow, black, those stripedy, bright color mixtures is what they like. They eat their young, so they like what looks like them. In this case, these are foils, and most of them are clear, so they're kind of a creamy white or a clear white with a little bit of foil inside. If you want to try the foil ones, they both work. And then I go up to the larger one, the quarter ounce. The quarter ounce is about maybe closer to 2.5 inches long, just shy of 3 maybe. And I use that when there's largemouth around. The largemouth will certainly eat a large bait. They don't care. Whereas I found that the peacocks tend to be a little picky. Now, in the world of saltwater, they work great. I've caught redfish, snook, and sea trout on them. I've also caught pompano on the small one, the little bitty one. Now, remember, pompano are more of a crustacean eater, but they'll go after a small minnow, a small fish. So they work there. I've had all kinds of stuff hit it. Of course, bluefish and mackerel will hit it, but here's the problem. That's a soft plastic. I didn't even tell you this. It already comes with a hook and a weight in it, so it's pre-hooked and it's pre-weighted. Well, I mentioned an eighth ounce, and so that's obvious. But anyway, it already has a hook in it. The max will just tear it to pieces. It's not. I mean, if you run into mackerel, you want to get it out of the water and throw something else at them, unless you like losing lures. But anyway, so check them out. When I was in Bass Pro, they had brand new packaging. I had to hunt. And by the way, they're in the freshwater section. You're probably not going to see them in salt because most people have no idea they work in salt. So now you do. But they're in the freshwater section, and they are the neatest little bit. There's 3 in a package typically. I'm sorry, I don't remember the price off the top of my head. But I'm sure you could order them if you had to. But if you go and ask in some of your shops, you'll probably find them there. They have been around for a long time. This is not something brand new. Lots of weighted hooks for soft plastics. Wow, when I first started playing with soft plastics, there wasn't nothing but a worm hook. The offset worm, it's got the little, call them crooked hooks. Man, dude, your hook is broken. No, it's not. Okay, so at the top of the hook, it's got like an L and then another drop down. It's hard to explain on the radio. Oh, I'm not on the radio. I'm on a podcast. Hard to explain on a podcast. It's, it's bent at the top so that when it goes into a worm, the worm winds up straight. You don't want the worm crooked on just a curved hook. So I used nothing but those in the early days of throwing sluggos and stuff like that, all the early soft plastics, and of course worms. Nowadays, there are so many soft plastics out there that the manufacturers over the last 5 or 6 years have really caught on. They started making a lot of really good weighted hooks, but in my opinion, most weren't all that great. They were cumbersome, they were hard to install into the soft plastic. Most of them, the only ones that really worked good were screw in type, where they had like a little baby corkscrew on top. Put them in there, put the hook in the soft plastic, and they had a lot of that provided a lot more wiggle because the corkscrew on the front is not solidly attached to the hook. It's in a little loop. But boy, has that changed. I was in there going through the hooks, and every manufacturer, so I'm not going to pick on anyone, but every manufacturer had a different and more innovative weighted hook than I've ever seen, and a lot of nice lightweights. I do not like throwing a weighted hook under a soft plastic that weights the plastic down, that makes it takes away the look when it's in the water. It doesn't swim correctly. It just sort of dives down to the bottom. I'm looking for something that I can use it as a jerk bait and tap it a little, and it swims a little before it starts to sink. So I like the lightweights. The 16th ounce is one of my favorites. 1/8 ounce works good too. And I like the ones where you can adjust the weight on the shaft of the hook, the shank. You can move it up and down. A lot of them rotate. You have to. It's really weird. They'll hold still and stay in place when you let go. When you rotate it, it makes enough friction so you can move it up and down the shank of the hook, and it works pretty good. So that way you can alter the way the lure either dives or doesn't dive or whatever. So anyway, I was really surprised at that, and I was also surprised at a lot more weight choices. Everybody's used pinch, split shot, which are pinch weights, but it seemed to me there were a lot higher quality ones. You pay more for them, but there were a lot higher quality ones with better edges on them for pinching them to get them back open again after you've used them. I saw all kinds of stuff. I was really pretty impressed with. We'll call that terminal tackle. I mean, that's basically what it was, terminal tackle. Speaking of soft plastics, that's mind-boggling. Okay, so saltwater's got lots. Freshwater's got more, a lot more. I learned a long time ago to go to the freshwater stores, and in this case, it was Kentucky. And I would come down to fish the salt in Florida and visit my brother, and I'd go to the freshwater store up there. They didn't carry saltwater stuff in Kentucky, and get all kinds of weird soft plastics. The Sluggo was the early thing I mentioned, and I still use that, by the way. So it has gotten so advanced. Z-Man, there's just so many out there. It's hard. I'm not going to pin it down on any one manufacturer. Just want you to try them. If you have not used soft plastics, you're really missing something, especially with the combination of the hooks that are available now that I just mentioned. So you have just a zillion different ways to rig these things and make them work for you. I prefer natural colors. I like the cream colors. I like something with a little bit of green in it and maybe something with black in it. And I don't venture into blues. I know people use all kinds of colors. That's up to you. Whatever you want to experiment with. If it works, great. I find that a lot of lure mentality is more about, do you think it works? Does it make you comfortable? Have you caught fish on it? That's why you keep going back to some things. But so don't be afraid to experiment. But I like the cream color. A lot of companies call it glow, like glow in the dark. That's what it looks like. Um, and then maybe just a little bit of green in it of different shades, dark green, light green, and then black. The black on a cream looks to me like a mullet, looks like a small mullet. And all of our fish, whether you're fishing East Coast or West Coast, all love to eat small mullet. So check out your soft plastics and don't be afraid to experiment. Get you a package or two of something that if it looks like a little fish, it's probably going to work. Ooh, let's talk rods and reels. Let's start with reels. Um, I don't need one, so I didn't buy one. I've got two. I got three I really like at this point. Anyway, how I am a big, big fan of Quantum, and I have been for quite some time. When I started guiding, the first high quality reel I bought was the Quantum Cabos, and they're stainless. I'm not going to kid you. Even in the 30s and 40s, they're heavy. They're heavier than most reels. But man, I got them because they were so daggone durable. When you have clients on a boat, they sometimes don't take care of equipment like you will on the boat. And they set stuff down, or it rolls off a seat, or it falls on the deck when they get all excited about bringing that big fish in. They want a picture. They just drop the rod and reel right on the deck. You're like, ooh, whatever. It's okay. I don't yell. I just, whatever. So that's the Quantum. The Quantum was really durable, and that's why I used the Cabos. When I stopped guiding, and I had my cancer problems. I had a bad back. I had all kinds of wonderful little. I had two surgeries on my back, and I just could not work a large reel like that or a heavy reel of any kind all day long from a boat. I had to do sit down breaks and stuff. So Quantum makes this thing called the Smoke, which is basically the high quality drag that they have in all their reels, but in a very lightweight frame. I've had one now for, oh my goodness, it's probably 6 years old at least, and it's still. I've got two of them. I bought them at the same time. I bought a newer series one about 2 years ago, and they did make some nice changes. They're a little more light. The drag is even better. So I mean, you're going to be stepping into a new one if you go buy one. But check out the Smoke. The Smoke is a really excellent reel. I'm crazy about it. I also used uh, quite a bit of Pin, but I'm not. I don't want to sit here and say that Pin is bad, because it's not. Pin is great. I use Pin when I was guiding. That was one of my main reels, along with the Cabo. The Pin was my everyday reel. Heavy, metal, durable, and so I used it quite a bit. I tell people this: if you don't want to spend the money on Quantum, which is going to be in the $200 range, you cannot go wrong in the lower price pins. So if you're gonna, and I saw a whole series of new stuff when I was at Bass Pro. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's out there now. So if you're not so sure about spending that kind of price, then by all means head for the pin reels, because they're excellent too. Now I'm going to talk about rods, but not the ones at Bass Pro. Okay, I'm sorry. They're good. Don't get. No, I'm not. I don't mean that. My favorite rod is not sold by anybody, or at least that's the way it seems. I've always had to go and get them online from the company. It's a Florida company. It's called Fitzgerald Rods, and Fitzgerald's been around for a while. Fitzgerald started making rods back in the serious bass days for bass tournaments. They were made for tournament fishermen. They are excellent. I picked up my first one. I'm going to guess it was 5, maybe 6 years ago, about the same time I got the early Quantum Smokes. Lightweight, I think it's 7 foot 2 inches to be technical, but 7 footer. It's called the Aqua Dream series, and at that time that was the only saltwater rod they have, and to this day that is about the only saltwater rods they have. They do have ones for spinning, and they do have one for casting, but the spinning is what I picked up. They're pricey. I mean, they ain't cheap. Under $200, I believe. Don't hold me to that. But man, oh man, I like them. It gets back to what I was talking about earlier. That combined with the Smoke was the lightest weight system I could find. And to this day, I still recommend and will buy a Fitzgerald as a replacement rod. I think I have 3 of them now. And very, very fast tip, really nice butt section up against like where the handle is. And I have wrestled some pretty serious fish around with the 35-inch reds. The same for really nice snook, 35 to 40-inch snook. I've landed on that thing. I even landed about a foot, what was that thing? About a 50-pound tarpon with it by accident. I was fishing for something else, and the tarpon took it, and I was able to get it in on that rod. And it's a very, very, very nice light rate. There are many, many other rods. I'm a big fan of St. Croix, Loomis. There's lots of other manufacturers out there. But if you're not going to get a custom rod, which is by far and away the best, having one built for you by somebody to your specs, then the Fitzgerald does a really great job. So check them out. Let's see. What else did I have on this? Last but not least. Gosh, I'm running out of time. This is great. See, that's what fishing does, man. I can talk about this all day long. The coolest new thing I saw at Bass Pro, believe it or not, was in the storage box area, the storage bag and box area. Everybody that fishes is probably familiar with the company called Plano. They have been around for a long time. I have dozens of boxes made by Plano. Plano came out with a new series. I had never seen it before until I walked in the shop. It's called the Edge series, just spelled just like it sounds, the Edge series. You can't miss them. They're yellow on the outside plastic edge along with clear tops. Okay, so what makes it special? As soon as I picked it up, I'm like, wow, this is a totally different storage box. Number one, it was pricey. I'm like, what are they selling here? I picked up one box, it was $64. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a plastic storage box for tackle. Then it got a little cheaper. I saw 40, then 32, and then down to around 12 and $16 based on the different sizes and what you're trying to do with it. They have made a universal series of tackle storage boxes that will store just about anything you'd want to put in it. And they're labeled as such. So terminal tackle, which is like your hooks and your weights and your jigs, your jig heads, those have a special box. And what's really neat about the inserts are much, much harder plastic than the flimsy ones that you typically see, even in early Plano boxes that warp and bend. And then if you tilt the box, your hooks wind up mixed together, or your little weights, your pinch weights will wind up mixed together. They don't ever stay in their own compartment. These do. I tested it. I bought two of them and I took them out in the garage and put stuff in them and then tilt them upside down, and they stay locked in place. They also have a moisture wick built into them. So if you put away something wet, it's not going to make everything else turn wet from like humidity inside the box. It's got a little moisture box in there with those little, those little white things, those little white pouchy things that you use like in cameras and binoculars and stuff like that. And they're replaceable. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it doesn't just float around in the box. It's actually got a little lock-in slot place where that goes. And every size you could possibly think of that you'd need, from large for if you're using spinner baits, like if you're bass fishing with spinners, buzz baits, things like that, they have boxes for that. They have box for lures, your castables like we use, lip baits, like Rapalas and things like that. And then they had a soft plastic box too. Now, warning about soft plastic, and they also warn you on that too. A lot of these new soft plastics will corrode plastic, hard plastics. So you get these soft plastics and you think, well, I'm going to take them out of the package and I'm going to throw them in a tackle box. Not a good idea. One thing I still keep in the package is my new stuff, mainly Z-Man. I use a lot of Z-Man lures. And Z-Man will tell you right off the bat, do not mix these with other soft plastics and do not put them in a plastic storage box. They'll eat it up. They'll literally just eat the box right up. So you don't want to do that. But every other thing I could possibly think of was included in this. So once again, that was Plano, and it's called the Edge series. I have two, like I said, I just got two, and I was really, really impressed with them. Well, that's all, folks. Well, no, get out there and go fishing. The weather has been really great on our coast. It's been windy on the east, but I understand it's been really good on the west. It's a breeze, but for all intents and purposes, I know on the West Coast they've been having high temperatures in the 80s, so the water is warming up rapidly. We're mowing into spring here. This is March, and this is when things start to get really, really good, and they're only going to get better as you go into April and May. So it's a good time. If you've been sitting around like me and not fishing a whole lot, you need to get out there because with the water temperatures warming up like they are, the fish will start. They'll start feeding like crazy is what they'll do. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend and share it on social media. Catch You Outdoors, hosted by Anchor and available via Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Facebook page is Catch You Outdoors. Website is catchyoutdoors.com. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.